Okay, let's have a look at the conservation of energy, the transformation of energy, and energy chains. For starters, let's say you have some energy. And maybe you don't think that's enough, and maybe you'd like some more. Oh, that's just too bad. You can't do that. You can't just create some more energy. Looking at it from the other way, maybe you had too much energy and just want to delete some. You've just got too much, you want to get rid of some. You can't actually do that either. You can't create or destroy energy because energy is conserved. It's known as the law of conservation of energy. The total energy remains the same. You can't create or destroy energy. So what you can do is take that energy and turn it into energy. Oh, poor little koala's a bit confused. Remember, energy is conserved. The total energy is conserved. But you can take energy of one form and turn it into a different type of energy. We call this transformation. Energy is conserved, but can be transformed from one type into another type. Remember, we've already looked at the 9 types of energy. We can transform energy from one type into another. So let's say we have a certain amount of energy. The total energy is conserved, but that total energy might be comprised of different forms of energy. Let's say one of those forms of energy we want more of. Remember, we can't just create more energy. So that energy has to come from somewhere. So the flip side is the other part of energy in this system has to lose some. If something is going to gain energy, something else has to lose energy. And if something has lost energy, it must have been transformed into a different type of energy. Because energy, remember, the total energy is conserved. Let's look at a few ways of changing energy from one form to another. Here is a picture of a person rubbing their hands, much like you'd do in Canberra on your way to school on a cold winter's morning if you forgot your gloves. Now, why do you do this? You're rubbing your hands. What's the point of it? To get warm, isn't it? We rub our hands because the friction generates heat, but that friction comes from the moving of our hands past each other. So we have kinetic energy, the energy of movement, being transformed into heat energy. Here's another example, a steam engine. Have a think about what the steam engine is actually doing, how it operates. What we're doing is making steam, but how do we do that? We heat water. So we're starting with heat energy. And what's the end goal? Movement. We want the steam engine to move forward. So we're going from heat energy into movement, kinetic energy. Another example is a Bunsen burner. Here we've got the energy stored in the gas that we're burning. So that's chemical potential energy. And whilst we can see it, we're getting light energy. And on a blue flame, you can often hear it. It's also known as the roaring flame, so that's sound energy. The end result is actually to get heat, isn't it? So we're starting with chemical potential energy, and we're getting heat energy. So the chemical potential energy is transformed into heat energy. Here is a pile of nails. Let's just assume you put these into a tin and you shook it. So you shook the tin of nails. Well, that's moving back and forth, so that's kinetic energy. The nails are all moving around inside the tin. But it's going to make quite a noise, isn't it? Quite a racket as the nails are slamming against each other and the inside of the tin. And so we're going to get sound energy. So we've gone from kinetic energy, and that is transformed into sound energy. Here's a car. Let's assume this is a petrol-driven car, and the end goal of a car is to move from point A to point B. How does it do that? From the petrol, well, that's chemical potential energy stored in the fuel, and that gets transformed into kinetic energy of the moving car. If it wasn't a petrol-driven car, maybe it was a modern car and it's an electric car, well, that's electrical energy turning into kinetic energy. Here's a battery. Batteries like this work on chemical potential energy and turn that into electrical energy. So you'd have this one first in the car from chemical potential to electrical energy, and then you could transform the electrical energy into the kinetic energy of the moving electric car. Another example here, photosynthesis, process that plants do to make their own food. Well, what they're doing is using the sunlight energy, and they're turning it into chemical potential energy, the energy stored in the food that they make, in the glucose that they produce through photosynthesis. Here's an electric light. I think it's pretty obvious here. We're going from electrical energy into light energy. Incandescent light bulbs, like we used to have in the old days, not so much now, they used to get really, really hot. They weren't very energy efficient. In fact, they were only about 5% efficient. So sure, you turn your light bulb on for a while, and yes, it gave out light, but it also got really, really hot. So energy can be transformed into the type of energy that you want it to be, but energy is always lost. There's always energy lost, usually in the form of heat. One more example, burning of magnesium ribbon. So magnesium ribbon, being a metal, it has chemical potential energy. The energy is stored in the bonds of the substance. And when you burn it, well, in this case, we're getting a lot of heat. It's very hot. We're also getting a bright white light. So if you have a burning magnesium ribbon, you will be warned by your teacher, don't stare directly at it because it is very bright. So the chemical potential energy is being transformed in this case to heat energy and to light energy. Now these examples were just going from one thing into another, from one type of energy being transformed into another. We looked briefly at a car, if it was an electric car, from electrical energy into kinetic energy, but then we looked at a battery from chemical potential energy into electrical. So we could actually string those two together, from the chemical potential energy to the electrical energy to the kinetic energy. Let's look at another slightly longer example of that. If you go for a run, as this person is, if you put some decent effort into it, you're going to get hot. You're going to get hot, your body's going to sweat to try and cool you down. The kinetic energy that you have been running along with is going to be transformed into heat energy. But back to the person running, before you got too hot and the energy was transformed into heat energy. Where did the energy of the person running come from? The kinetic energy, where did that come from? Well, of course, it came from the nutrition of the person. We eat food. We can't do photosynthesis, but we can eat food instead of making it ourselves. And we do that so that we can do respiration to get energy. So the energy of the person running along came from the chemical potential energy that was stored in the food. But where did that energy come from beforehand? Well, it came from the energy of the sun, didn't it? Plants do photosynthesis, and then we eat the plants, or we eat the cow that ate the plant, etc. But that solar energy, the light energy, where did that come from? Well, it came from the sun. Stars produce their energy through nuclear fusion. So in this case, we've got a number of steps. We've gone from nuclear energy of the sun to the light energy used for photosynthesis, which then transforms the energy to be stored in chemical potential energy, the energy stored in the food. The person eats that, digests it, breaks the food down, releases the energy, and goes for a run. So now we've got kinetic energy. And then, of course, gets very hot. So we've got heat energy. This is what we refer to as a chain. Because we're talking energy, it's an energy chain. And we would write it something like this. We would just show from one type of energy moving into another one, being transformed, I should say, into another type of energy, and being transformed to another, etc. So we can get these energy chains. They can actually be fairly long. But as you can see, there is no problem whatsoever in changing from one type of energy to another. We can transform energy from this to that, no problem. But just keep in mind that the total energy of a system must be conserved. Energy cannot be created or destroyed, but there is absolutely no problem with transforming it from one type into another. So I'll leave you with that there. One more thing before we go, just a quick little meme that does the rounds from time to time. Solar energy is actually nuclear energy from a safe distance because, of course, if you're at the surface of the sun, really not so safe. You go outside on a nice sunny day, yeah, that's much, much safer. But that solar energy of the sunny day, where did it come from? Well, it came from the nuclear reactions of the sun, so it's nuclear energy, isn't it? Anyway, it's a bit of a dad joke. I thought it was funny. And we'll leave it there.
Like the video, punch that like button. Want to see more videos? Smash that subscribe.